police officer pulls you over, your heart is already pounding. Your hand reaches for your glove compartment where you keep a firearm that you legally own. You have done nothing wrong. You are a responsible gun owner, and in the next few seconds you are about to make a mistake that thousands of Americans make every single year. That mistake could cost you your freedom, it could cost you your money, it could cost you the life you have built. And here is the terrifying part. Almost nobody tells you what to do instead. If you carry a firearm, live with someone who carries a firearm, or ever find yourself in a situation where police might interact with you, what you are about to hear matters more than almost any other piece of information you will encounter this year. This is not about politics. This is about one simple fact. A single sentence spoken in the wrong moment can turn a routine interaction into a life-altering catastrophe. And most people have no idea this danger even exists. Let me walk you through exactly what happens. You are driving home from work, you have a concealed carry permit. Your firearm is holstered on your hip or secured in your vehicle exactly where the law allows it to be. A police officer pulls you over maybe for a broken taillight. You know your rights, you know you have done nothing wrong. And when the officer asks you a question that seems completely innocent, you answer honestly, the way any good citizen would. Yes, officer, I have a gun. Those 4 words, that is all it takes. The entire energy of the situation changes in an instant. The officer now sees you as a potential threat before you have even finished your sentence. Your hands are suddenly seen differently. Your movements are suddenly seen differently. The entire dynamic of the encounter shifts, and you are now operating from a position of disadvantage that you created with your own words. And the worst part is that you meant no harm. You were simply being honest. This happens thousands of times across the country every year. People who legally own firearms, people who have permits, people who have never hurt anyone. They say those 4 words and within minutes they are cuffed on the side of the road. Their firearm is seized. Their permit is potentially revoked. They face criminal charges. They spend thousands of dollars on legal defense. And some of them end up convicted of felonies that destroy their ability to own firearms forever, their ability to vote, their ability to hold certain jobs. All because they answered a question honestly in a moment when honesty was the wrong strategy. If you found this helpful so far, make sure you stick around, because the most important part is still coming. And this is the part that could genuinely protect you from making a serious mistake. Now, before you think this is about lying to police, let me be very clear. What I'm about to share with you does not involve lying. It does not involve deception. It does not involve hiding anything from law enforcement. What I'm about to share with you is a legal, lawful, and strategically smart way to handle an encounter with police when you are carrying a firearm. And it starts with understanding a fundamental principle that most people never learn until it is too late. The principle is this: police officers are trained to gather information. When they ask you questions, they are not asking them purely out of curiosity. They are building a picture of the situation. And when that picture includes a firearm, their training takes over in ways that can be difficult to predict. The goal of any responsible gun owner in a police encounter is to provide the information that the law requires while avoiding statements that create unnecessary risk, unnecessary tension, or unnecessary legal exposure. Here is what you need to understand. In most states, you are not legally required to volunteer information about a firearm unless an officer specifically asks you directly. And when that question comes, the way you answer it matters enormously. Let me walk you through the specific language and the specific approach that experienced attorneys recommend for every gun owner to know. When an officer approaches your vehicle, remain calm. Keep your hands visible on the steering wheel or on the dashboard where they can be clearly seen. Do not reach for anything until the officer has asked you to do so. This is standard advice for any traffic stop, and it becomes even more critical when you are carrying a firearm. The officer does not know who you are. The officer does not know whether you are armed. Your job in those first moments is to communicate that you are not a threat through your body language, your tone, and your complete cooperation with basic requests. When the officer asks for your license and registration, provide them. When the officer asks if you know why they pulled you over, answer that question honestly and respectfully. Cooperate with the basic process of the stop. The goal is to establish a tone of mutual respect and cooperation that makes the encounter as smooth as possible. Now here is where the critical moment arrives. At some point during the encounter, the officer may ask you if you are carrying a firearm. This is the moment that most people get wrong, and this is where the wrong answer can change everything. Do not say, "Yes, I have a gun." Do not volunteer that information proactively. What you should say instead, and this is the phrase that every gun owner needs to memorize and practice until it feels natural, is simple, direct, and completely lawful. If an officer asks you directly whether you have a firearm, you say this and nothing more. Yes, officer, I am licensed to carry, and the firearm is state the location simply and clearly. That is the entire sentence. Yes, officer, I am licensed to carry, and the firearm is on my right hip, or yes, officer, I am licensed to carry, and the firearm is secured in the glove compartment. That language accomplishes several things simultaneously. It answers the question directly and honestly. It establishes that you are a legal carrier. It communicates the location of the firearm so the officer can manage the situation appropriately. And it does so in a way that sounds calm, controlled, and professional. Compare that response to the casual, honest answer that most people give in the moment. Yes, I have a gun. That answer, while truthful, creates immediate tension for several reasons. It is vague. It does not tell the officer where the firearm is. It does not communicate that you are a licensed carrier. It simply drops a fact into the conversation without any context, and in the split-second judgment of an officer who is trained to assess threats, that lack of context can be interpreted in ways that are not favorable to you. The difference between those two responses is the difference between an encounter that ends with a warning and an encounter that ends with you in handcuffs. The difference between those two responses is the difference between keeping your firearm and losing it. The difference between those two responses can be the difference between walking away from that interaction with your rights intact and spending the next year in legal proceedings trying to restore them. This is where people go wrong in ways that are genuinely heartbreaking to watch. They are good people. They have followed the law. They have obtained their permit. And when a police officer asks them a question, they answer it the way any honest citizen would, without thinking about the strategic implications of their words. And by the time they understand what went wrong, the legal damage has already been done. Let me give you a realistic example of how this plays out in real life. Imagine you are driving home from a shooting range, you have your firearm secured in your vehicle, you have your permit, everything is completely legal. A police officer pulls you over because one of your brake lights is out. You know you have done nothing dangerous. The officer walks up to your window and begins the standard interaction. How are you doing tonight? Do you know why I pulled you over? You respond politely. You provide your license and registration. The officer sees that you have a concealed carry permit on your record. That information is visible to them when they run your license. The officer might ask, do you have any weapons in the vehicle? This is where most people, even experienced gun owners, will say something like, yes, I have my gun in the back seat, or yes, it's on my hip. And here is what happens next. The officer now has to manage the situation. They do not know if you are a threat. They do not know if you are about to reach for that firearm. Even though you are a responsible, law-abiding citizen, the officer has to treat you as a potential threat based on the information they have. The officer may draw their weapon. The officer may order you out of the vehicle. The officer may place you in handcuffs while they sort out the situation. None of these actions mean you will be charged with a crime, but they also do not mean you will walk away without consequences. Your firearm will be seized as evidence. You will potentially be transporting to a police station for further questioning. Your permit may be suspended during the investigation. You will spend thousands of dollars on a lawyer to navigate the process. And even if everything is ultimately dismissed, you will have spent months dealing with a legal situation that could have been avoided entirely with different language in that initial moment. Now consider the alternative. The officer asks if you have any weapons. You respond with the phrase I described earlier. Yes, officer, I am licensed to carry and the firearm is in the glove compartment. The officer now has context. They know you are a legal carrier. They know you have disclosed the informer. Tion proactively. They know the location of the firearm. The officer may still ask you to step out of the vehicle. They may still secure the firearm temporarily for the duration of the encounter. But the tone of the interaction is fundamentally different. In the second scenario, the encounter is far more likely to end with a warning about your brake light and a request to have a nice evening. In the first scenario, you are facing a months-long legal process that may cost you your permit and your firearm even if you were doing nothing wrong. This is not about whether you should disclose a firearm to police. The law in most states requires disclosure in most situations. This is about how you disclose it when you disclose it and what you say in that critical moment. The law requires honesty. It does not require you to volunteer information before you are asked. It does not require you to use language that creates unnecessary tension. If you are still with me, take a moment to share this with someone you know who carries a firearm, because what you are about to learn could protect them from a mistake that many people never recover from. One of the most common mistakes that gun owners make is saying too much in the moment. They are nervous, they want to be cooperative, they want to show the officer that they are a good person. So they talk, they explain where they were, they explain why they have the firearm. They apologize for having the firearm. They say things like, "I hope this is not a problem, officer, I have a permit, I have had this for years." None of that language is helpful. In fact, most of it is potentially harmful. Every additional sentence you speak is an opportunity for miscommunication, misinterpretation, or a statement that could be used against you later. Police officers are trained to document everything that is said during an encounter. If you say something that sounds ambiguous or inconsistent in any way, that statement will be in the report. And if a prosecutor ever reviews your case, those statements will be evaluated for any evidence of wrongdoing. The more you say, the more material you provide for that evaluation. This is why the exact language matters so much. "Yes, officer, I am licensed to carry and the firearm is location." That is it. That is the only sentence you need to speak in that moment. Practice it until it feels natural. Practice it in front of a mirror. Practice it with a friend. Make sure that when the moment comes, your response is automatic, calm, and precise. Because in that moment, you will not have time to think about what to say. You will only have time to say what you have already practiced. The same principle applies to passengers in your vehicle. If someone else is in the car with you and they have a firearm, they should also wait for the direct question before disclosing. Do not volunteer information about another person's firearm. Do not answer questions on their behalf unless you are certain of their status and their wishes. Each person's firearm status is their own disclosure to make. There is also an important distinction to understand about what the law actually requires. In some states, you are required to inform any officer who approaches you that you are carrying a firearm. These are known as duty to inform states. In other states, you are only required to inform an officer if they directly ask you about weapons. Know your state's laws. Know whether you are in a duty to inform state or an ask and inform state. And understand that regardless of which type of state you live in, the way you disclose matters enormously. In a duty to inform state, you should make the disclosure proactively, but you should still do so using the same calm, professional language. "I need to inform you that I am a licensed concealed carrier and I have a firearm in the vehicle." That sentence, delivered calmly and clearly, achieves the legal requirement while establishing the cooperative, professional tone that will shape the rest of the encounter. In an ask and inform state, you wait for the question and then answer using the exact format I described earlier. Either way, the key is precision in your language, calm in your delivery, and minimal additional speech beyond the necessary disclosure. This brings me to another critical point that many gun owners never consider until it is too late. Once you have disclosed your firearm status to an officer, do not touch the firearm under any circumstances unless the officer explicitly instructs you to do so. Do not adjust it. Do not reach toward it. Do not move your hand in its direction. Keep your hands visible and away from the firearm for the entire duration of the encounter. This is both a practical safety measure and a legal protection measure. An officer who sees you reaching toward a disclosed firearm may interpret that movement as a threat, and the consequences of that misinterpretation can be severe and immediate. If you need to adjust your firearm for comfort or safety, ask the officer for permission first. Say, "Officer, I need to adjust my firearm for safety, may I do so?" This is a reasonable request. A professional officer will either grant permission or instruct you on how to proceed, but never assume that adjustment is acceptable without asking. The few seconds it takes to ask permission are absolutely worth it compared to the consequences of a misunderstanding. By now, you might be wondering about the legal risks of not disclosing when required versus the risks of disclosing in a way that creates unnecessary problems. The answer is clear. The legal risk of failing to disclose when required is far greater than the risk of disclosing incorrectly. If you are in a duty to inform state and you do not proactively disclose, you are committing a crime that could result in the revocation of your permit, criminal charges, and the permanent loss of your right to carry. The legal risk of disclosing incorrectly, while real, is manageable if you follow the guidelines I have described. The risk of saying nothing when you are required to say something is categorically worse. This is why knowing your state laws is not optional. It is essential. Take the time to research your state's specific requirements regarding firearm disclosure to law enforcement. Understand exactly what you are required to say, when you are required to say it, and how you are required to say it. This is knowledge that could protect your freedom, your assets, and your future in a single moment. Make sure you like this video if you have found the information valuable, because this is the kind of content that can genuinely change outcomes in real situations. And share it with anyone you know who carries a firearm, because they need this information just as much as you do. Let me bring all of this together into a clear framework that you can remember and use in any situation where you encounter law enforcement while carrying a firearm. This framework has 5 steps, and if you internalize these 5 steps, you will be better prepared than the vast majority of gun owners in America. Step 1. Remain calm and keep your hands visible. Do not reach for anything until the officer asks you to do so. Your body language in those first moments sets the tone for everything that follows. Step 2. Cooperate fully with the basic process of the encounter. Provide your license, registration, and any other requested documents promptly and without argument. Answer questions about the reason for the stop honestly and respectfully. Step 3. Wait for the direct question about weapons before disclosing. Do not volunteer firearm status proactively unless you are in a duty-to-inform state. Step 4. When the question is asked, respond with exactly this format. Yes, officer, I am licensed to carry and the firearm is location. Nothing more, nothing less. Deliver this sentence calmly, clearly, and without additional commentary. Step 5. Do not touch your firearm for any reason during the encounter unless the officer explicitly instructs you to do so. If you need to adjust it for safety, ask for permission first. These 5 steps, practiced in advance, will give you a clear path through any police encounter while you are carrying. They will protect your legal position. They will protect your firearm. They will protect your permit. And they will give you the best possible outcome in a situation where the stakes could not be higher. Before I finish, let me address one more scenario that creates enormous confusion for many gun owners. What happens if you are in a place where firearms are prohibited, such as a government building, a school, or a private business that has posted signage against weapons? The rules change in these situations, and you need to understand those changes before you ever find yourself in one of them. If you are carrying in a location where firearms are prohibited, you have a choice to make before you enter. You can leave your firearm at home or in your vehicle, which allows you to enter the location legally. Or you can carry anyway, knowing that you are committing a crime that could result in serious penalties including arrest, fines, and the permanent loss of your right to carry. Many gun owners make the mistake of carrying into prohibited locations without realizing they are doing so, either because they forgot about the prohibition or because they did not know the law applied to them. Know where firearms are prohibited in your state. Know what the signs look like. Know what the penalties are. And make the decision before you enter rather than after you are caught. The legal consequences of carrying in a prohibited location are severe and permanent. They are not worth the risk of an accidental violation. I want you to finish this video feeling genuinely prepared. Not scared, not anxious, but prepared. You now understand a piece of information most gun owners never learn until it is too late. You now know the exact words to use in a critical moment. You now know how to protect your freedom, your permit, and your firearm in any encounter with law enforcement. And you have a clear framework to follow that will keep you on the right side of the law every single time. If you found this video valuable, the most important thing you can do right now is share it with someone you care about who carries a firearm. That person might face this exact situation tomorrow, and the information you just gave them could be the difference between a routine encounter and a legal nightmare. Share this video. Send it to your friends. Post it where other responsible gun owners will see it. You might just save someone from a mistake that takes years to recover from. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, stay informed, and always know your rights before you need them.